I never planned on being an assistant. It started with a few gigs on Upwork and turned into a career that connected me with nonprofits and pro athletes. Today, I'm going to share how I started as a freelancer, landed my first full time role, and eventually became an executive assistant to a professional athlete. Let's get started. Now, I want to say that my journey is a bit different than others. So, I started with Upwork, okay? I wanted to find some gig work because at the time I had first graduated college and I was so broke. I could not find a job. I just didn't know what to do. And at the time, my boyfriend, he was in and out of the country. So I needed something flexible. So what I did was I went to go look for gig work. And of course, you have multiple websites to find gig work. And Upwork for me was really the most user friendly versus Fiverr. So I went on Upwork and I got busy. My boyfriend lent me some money so I could continue to buy these things called connects, where you kind of use it as currency on there. You need connects to apply for different gigs. So he kept giving me money to do that. They're cheap, they're not super expensive or anything, but thank you, babe. He was the one who kind of funded that for me. And I got a lot of little gigs, customer service and billing and managing Facebooks, managing Instagrams, managing inboxes, deleting stuff, creating, some scripts for people, things like that. Like I had a lot of those type of gigs, and eventually I ran into a interview on Upwork with a nonprofit called Women in Cloud, and it was to be the executive assistant to the president. And I landed that interview by the grace of God. He was looking out at the time. And yeah, the interview went great and I got hired. That was my first full time role. And I moved into different things within the company at the time. They were still kind of building and kind of filling things out on how their structure was going to be. So I played dibble dabbled in the HR, I dibble dabbled in the hiring process, I dibble dabbled in the operations. So that was my first big girl role, and I was there for about 3 years. I left due to an toxic environment. But yeah, rewind, let's go back to Upwork. When it came down to Upwork, the important thing is that you stay consistent. You stay consistent and you stay doing good work. I did have one bad review on there, and I believe it was a miscommunication. I don't even remember what happened, but it didn't affect me at all. To be quite frank, I had one bad review, and those things happen. Things happen, but you have to stay consistent and stay credible. Just a key takeaway, freelancing is a good way to fill the waters in anything, not even just being an assistant. If you want to be a travel agent or if you want to just do small things to have your freedom, freelancing is a great way to do that. Now, the only thing is being an entrepreneur is not easy. So you are not guaranteed money unless you have an actual gig locked in. So just to keep that in mind, I don't want you to go quitting your job and be like, I want to do this because I told you that. Give it some time first. It took a long time before I found my full-time role. So now, as you can see, now Upwork has turned into my full-time role. I did have a kind of a training period while I was still working through Upwork, and I ended up working out of Upwork, and I just worked full-time for myself as a quote unquote consultant. Technically, like I was working as a W-9 worker instead of a W-2, or 1099. Sorry, a 1099 worker instead of a W-2. And I will say that being someone that still worked for myself but still had a full time role, that was able to teach me the structure, the systems, and it gave me the professional growth I needed to move forward. Now, moving forward, like I said, I was only with Women in Cloud for 3 years. And then within those 3 years, I was already naturally working for the NFL player because, like I said, my journey was different. He was my best friend. So I was already naturally doing all these things. So he decided to go ahead and hire me as his assistant officially. I was already managing his life, scheduling things for him, especially trips. I really was big into being my own travel agent at the time, but I ended up stop doing that because I'm not a big fan of sales. I hate sales. Even though sales is a very key thing that you should have in your life, I hate it. Can't do it. Find somebody else to do it. And, just over time, he was just like, he needed me so much that he was just like, I'm going to make this an official role. Like I said, I came from Upwork. And at the time, when I first started into it, I was really cheap. But then when you begin to really learn your worth, you know that you deserve more. Don't forget that. As you grow, you deserve more. And while I'm a very nice person, if you know, you know, but I am a very nice person, so things just started to go downhill. It became a toxic environment. I just was worth more. And at the time, being a nonprofit, you don't have all of that money to dish out. And I don't think she thought that I was worth more. So I ended up just leaving. I had a lot of bad things happen to me that was back to back, and it led to kind of my exit out of Women in Cloud. Luckily, I was able to fall back on to my second gig, which was the assistant to Jerome Baker, and that has been working for me ever since. Now, the differences between supporting a executive versus a professional athlete is drastic, honey. The hours when you're working for a professional athlete will severely vary because depending on how the athlete is, whether he's organized or chaotic, which that's how Jerome is. Jerome is extremely chaotic. You may not have hours every day like how I am, but when I do have hours, they're high. So sometimes, like during the off season, is really my super busy season because he travels a lot, very last minute, I must say. So it takes a lot of work, especially when he's somewhere like Dubai or somewhere super far where basically the time zone of you being sleeping, you may need to be up to help him. So those hours are much higher, and which should carry on to other months that you may get paid less. That's another thing about being an assistant, especially a freelance assistant. You have to make sure that you're managing your money like a entrepreneur. Okay, you will not have busy months every month, especially if you do not have a set payment on how much you're going to get paid. Because for me, technically, I'm salary, but I just during the off season, because the off season kind of balances out with the season. So some months I may get higher, some months I may get lower. I hope that makes sense. So now let's talk about the characteristics that you need to become a great assistant. So the first thing, of course, right, is organization and time management. Duh. Duh. How can you assist somebody else if you're not organized and you don't have time management? Now, I will say I am a type C person. So I could be a little chaotic and I can also be super organized at the same time. But I keep my people together. And you can use different tools to be organized, but you have to be very adaptable to what people may need. And here's an example. With Women in Cloud, we use the Airtable. With Jerome, I use my notes app and the calendar. He is a simple man, and sometimes I organize him very well because I know everything. That's the only person that really needs to know everything is me. But the best way that he works is straight through the notes app. And this may sound a little cringy or just a little off for people, but you have to do what works best for your client. Attention to detail. Attention to detail is the biggest one of the biggest characteristics. So there's multiple big characteristics, but attention to detail is very, very, very important because there are things that can go perfect, but you may miss over that little slip and it may piss your client off. And it could put you on the verge of being fired. I've made many mistakes. I've worked as an assistant for a very long time, and I'm a human. So keep that in mind. Just allow yourself to make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. Communication skills, super important. I over communicate like a lot because I want to make sure that my client is at ease, but I also want to set the expectations for what I want for my client. Discretion and trustworthiness. Your client has to be able to trust you, or it's going to be a terrible dynamic. If they feel like they have to micromanage you, you're going to hate it as a person. It's not going to be a safe environment for anyone anymore. And it's just not going to be good for anyone. So y'all have to trust each other. Y'all have to build a relationship to the point where y'all can trust each other to do whatever y'all need to do, honestly, to work together. Adaptability, just being flexible, especially with last minute stuff. You have to be a doer, taking initiative. There are some times when I was working at Women in Cloud, my boss would give me some of the most vaguest instructions or vaguest things that she needs me to do. And I just had to do it. I just did it. I just took what was told, what was asked of me, and I did it. Don't know how I did it sometimes, but you just got to be able to be like, all right, I'm going to make it work. You just got to make it work. That's how life is. Being able to problem solve and having people skills are also two very important skills that you should have. I will say that I'm very outgoing, but I'm also an introvert at the same time. But I have the ability to have conversations with people, talk to people, and kind of get the information I need as well. And being able to problem solve is another big thing. Critical thinking skills are very important. You have to be able to figure out a resolution to a problem. When your client comes to you with a problem, you have to be like, all right, let's figure this out, and sit there and give options. Sometimes I'm not always right and I may not always have the best answer, but being resolution oriented is the best thing that can help you when you want to become an assistant. This just really just takes me to the lessons I learned on my journey. In the beginning, it wasn't easy. It wasn't luxury. And I kind of just said yes to everything. Yes, I was young. I don't remember how old I was. Was I 21, 22? I don't know, around that. And also keep in mind, another big journey on the way is that networking matters. Talking to people matters. Getting to know people matters. They could put you in situations that you may never know that you would be in. Just go ahead and network. Put yourself out there and saying yes to opportunities that may be lower than you, but they may put you in the door. I'm going to finish with some advice to aspiring assistants out there. Start small. If you can start big, start big. Start big, But if you can't, start small. Don't be discouraged because you're receiving no's from big brands, different job applications. Start small. Start with gigs. Build your portfolio up so that people can't say no. So just build a relationship on trust, professionalism, and communication. Also, being an assistant, you have to be open to different industries. I started in tech. Well, I didn't necessarily start in tech, but my first full-time role as assistant, I started in tech. I had another gig in music, and I had another gig somewhere else, but my final form is in the pro athletes. So be open to where being an assistant can take you. Keep in mind that every gig that you have is a stepping stone, okay? Like I said, network. Get to know everyone on the team if you're able to work with one. Connect with all of them. Now remember, you don't have to know everything on day one. What matters is showing up, being reliable, and learning along the way. If you're considering becoming an assistant, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think is the most important skill to have, or let me know if there's anything I missed that I can help you with. I do plan on having something special coming in the future for all of my assistants. Hopefully, I could get you guys more in the professional space, executive space, athlete space. I want to try to make that a little more accessible for people. Thank you for watching. Bye, guys.